Yo, 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 what is up, guys? It's Cohen back here again tonight with another episode of After the Buzzer, the show where I tell you about all the NBA games from today, any extra storylines that there are. There, as usual, were some really good games, some really bad games, a couple blowouts here and there, some games I really didn't think were going to be blowouts that ended up as one, particularly. We can talk about Nuggets Knicks a little bit later. But I think the game I have to talk about first is the Bucks Wizards game. Now, if you've watched the Wizards at all this season, you know that the Washington Wizards play games that are way more insane than they have any right to be. The Wizards have had some of the craziest finishes all season. Game against the Lakers, game like every game that they've played against the Brooklyn Nets. The Wizards just always find a way to make games way more stressful than they need to be, and that's exactly what they did again tonight. However, it wasn't in a win, it was in a loss. Another Bradley Beal 40-point loss. This isn't on Beal, this isn't on Westbrook, this is just kind of on the supporting cast, I would say. And in terms of the supporting cast, one thing I want to talk about in particular is how good Daniel Gafford has been this season, especially since he got traded to the Wizards. A lot of times players do have a lot of talent. They just really need a new situation. And Daniel Gafford was a prime example of that. There was just a crowded front court rotation for the Bulls, and bringing in Tice and Vucevic to replace Wendell Carter, there was really no room for Gafford. So moving him to the Wizards made a ton of sense. And for a team in the Wizards that have really been lacking a down low presence for most of the season since Thomas Bryant went out early in the year, Daniel Gafford has been a perfect fit for them. The problem is, Scott Brooks doesn't play Daniel Gafford nearly enough. Tonight, 17 minutes to Robin Lopez, 17 minutes to Alex Len. Alex Len had 2 and 4 in 17 minutes, right? Robin Lopez at 8 and 6. Daniel Gafford in 14 minutes had 12, 10, and 2 assists. I don't know why Daniel Gafford doesn't play more for this team. He's so good and he helps them out so much when he's on the court. There's no reason the Wizards should be losing games where Russ puts up 29, 12, and 17 and Beal puts up 42, 4, and 3. There's no reason they should be losing these games. If they're putting up those stat lines, other people have to step up. And particularly, it's their front court play. Because they get some decent play every now and again from Bertans, but he's nothing consistent. And then Robin Lopez and Alex Len just aren't great players at this point in both of their careers. They've had previous successful stints, but for right now, Daniel Gafford needs to be their starting center, and he needs to be their center going forward. You've got to commit to him. You've got to see what you have in him, because when Thomas Bryant comes back from his Achilles injury, you've got to be able to see what, or not Achilles, ACL. I can't remember which one it was, Achilles or ACL. Either way, when Thomas Bryant comes back from that injury, you've got to know what you have in Daniel Gafford so you can make a decision about which one of them is going to be your starting center going forward. You've got to be able to make that decision, and if you don't take that time to fully evaluate Daniel Gafford, how are you going to make that decision? So the supporting cast really needed to help Russ and Beal tonight. The team's been on fire so far. They've been winning nonstop, and that's partially why this was such a good win for the Bucks. Not only this, but their past 2 wins against the Brooklyn Nets as well, one of which I talked about in another After the Buzzer episode, but I didn't get to talk about the last one. I'm really swamped right now with my final assignments. I'm in college, if you did not know, and as the semester wraps up, all my professors gave me work at the same time, and so I didn't get to talk much about that second Bucks-Nets game. But really, as a whole, I want to talk about how good the Milwaukee Bucks are, and I feel like there's something special brewing here. Now, last season, they were really, really good, and I did feel like that Bucks team was going to go much further than they did. I thought they could definitely come out of the Eastern Conference, but, it was up in the air. And then, of course, the Miami Heat end up sending them home in the second round. But this Bucks team feels much more solid, and I think a lot of that is because they've learned from that experience. They've got some better pieces now. I think PJ Tucker was a good addition, even though he doesn't put up much stats. Solid defender. That playoff presence is always useful. Jrue Holiday, incredible addition to this team. He was really someone that this team needed. A great guard defender, especially when there are really effective guards in the Eastern Conference. Especially when you potentially are going to go up against Brooklyn in the second round. You need a great guard defender, and I think Jrue Holiday is exactly that. Dante DiVincenzo tonight against the Wizards, 19, 3 rebounds, 4 assists. Giannis, incredible. He's been phenomenal, playing probably even better than he played last season when he won the MVP award for the second straight time. 23 points, 9 rebounds, 8 assists tonight, which is a very casual night for Giannis at this point. He put up monster games in both games against the Brooklyn Nets, and that's really what I want to talk about here, is that the Milwaukee Bucks have not only the potential to do something special, but the potential to really upset one of those top 2 teams, if not both of them. The Milwaukee Bucks are super tough. They play really hard. They play hard-nosed defense. They've got a ton of talent. Giannis, like I said, Jrue Holiday, Dante DiVincenzo, Chris Middleton didn't even play tonight. And like I said, I know this Wizards team is the 10th seed in the Eastern Conference, but they've been the best team in the NBA record-wise since, I think it was about April 8th, April 1st, one of those two. So either way, during the month of April, they were dominant. And now coming into the month of May, where they're really trying to make the play-in tournament, they're trying to make that playoff push because they really don't have a reason to tank with Beal and Westbrook. they're fighting hard. They're coming out and playing every single night, and the Bucks could easily get very complacent, riding the high of 2 big wins against the Brooklyn Nets, coming into this game against the 10th seed in Eastern Conference. They could very easily chill and end up slipping and losing this game. And there were some times where it looked like they might. At the end of the game, they had 2 massive errors. They had the play under the basket where Raul Neto stripped, I forget who it was. I think it was Pat Connaughton or Dante DiVincenzo, one of the two. They got stripped, and Raul Neto just barely stepped on the baseline with an opportunity to kick it back out to Westbrook and go for a game-winning shot, down 1 point. So thankfully for the Bucks, Raul Neto did step out of bounds, and then on the following inbounds play after they called a timeout to kind of reset and think things over, they threw the ball like directly to Garrison Matthews, and he nearly hits a half-court shot to win the Wizards the game. It was really close. Like, it banked off, it came off glass, and it looked like it had the angle to go in. It was just a little too strong. So the Bucks almost threw this game away, but they didn't. And ultimately winning this game, not getting complacent, even without Chris Middleton, is a big accomplishment for this Bucks team, because I think that's something that they kind of fell into in the playoffs last season. Obviously, they had that game 1 loss against the Orlando Magic, which people are like, whoa, what the hell is going on here? And then they kind of fixed things up. But then going into the Heat series, the Heat came out and they had that underdog mentality. They came in and said, okay, we're going to kick your butt if you don't punch us first. And they didn't punch first. The Heat end up winning the series in 6 games. The Bucks feel like they have the kind of that underdog, like hard-nosed, we know that y'all don't see us as the favorite mentality. They are pretty much all season they've been talked about as the 3rd best team behind the Sixers and the Nets. The Bucks are seen as that 3rd team in the Eastern Conference. And while that's reasonable, the Bucks do have the 3rd best record in the East, so it makes sense. The Bucks might have the ability to give either of those teams the most problems out of any other team in the East. Again, we've seen it going up against the Brooklyn Nets. Giannis gives them tons of problems. We've known that their interior defense is a big problem, and Giannis is just a monster on the inside. They cannot stop him. But additionally, in those 2 games, he was hitting threes. He was hitting mid-range jumpers. And if Giannis is able to do that, they can't just pack the paint. You have to play out on him. And that's the biggest thing for Giannis and the Bucks going into the playoffs. They need Giannis to be putting up those massive efforts, and additionally, they need him to be a threat shooting the basketball. Because this team has some threats here and there, but Giannis is the guy he's the focal point of their offense, and if your focal point is always attacking the rim, they're going to pack the paint. They might not have the bodies to necessarily do so, but if you put 2 or 3 bodies in the paint, it's going to make life really difficult for Giannis. But the way that he was shooting against the Nets, because they had to sag off, and so if Giannis makes them pay, that opens up the series entirely. The Nets are super talented, but they're not invincible. No team in the NBA is invincible, and when you combine the ability of Giannis to play alongside 2 pretty good defenders and a great defender, one of them in Jrue Holiday, with Chris Middleton, a good defender, 2 really solid supporting players, this Bucks team has the potential to beat the Nets and the potential to beat the Sixers, and I truly believe that. Do not count out the Bucks when you're thinking about the Eastern Conference. They've shown over the past 3 games, they've shown a lot recently, that they are not to be thought of as that 3rd team. They're thought of to be in the same exact tier as Brooklyn and Philly, and I think that's fair. I think they do have to be thought of as one of the top 3 teams. They're all in a tier of their own, I believe. They're there. They belong there for a reason. I don't think this is the same situation where last season the Bucks, we were like, oh, the Bucks are so good, and then they ended up collapsing in the playoffs. I don't think it's that same situation. This team has a different feel to them. I can't fully explain it. I explained kind of what I've seen with them, but I can't explain exactly what it is. They just have a different feel, and that's terrifying for the rest of the Eastern Conference, especially whichever team ends up with that 2 or 3 seed. And I say 2 or 3 seed because the Bucks are only 1 game back of the Brooklyn Nets now for the 2 seed. I think Philly's pretty much got that 1 seed locked up. I think that Philly does have one of the easiest, if not the easiest schedules in the entire NBA to close out the season. And they now have a 2-game lead over the Brooklyn Nets. I'm pretty sure it's closed out with only about 6 games left in the season for the Philadelphia 76ers. A lot of those games against lottery teams. So they're going to get the 1 seed, which means that they avoid a potential matchup with the Bucks in the 2nd round. And they force not only do they do that, but they force the Brooklyn Nets and Milwaukee Bucks to play each other in the 2nd round, which I think is much bigger than anything involving playoff seeding. I think making those 2 powerhouses have to fight through each other to go face the Sixers, potentially, assuming they do win that 4-5 matchup, whoever wins that series, and they beat them in the 2nd round. Now, whoever they play in the conference finals has had to go through the other team. And I do think the Bucks can come out of that. But it makes it really tough for whichever team comes out of there, because Philly could play an 8 seed, And no disrespect to the Hawks or the Knicks, the 4 and 5 seeds right now, I think Philly beats either of those teams in 5 games or 6 games potentially. And I think there will probably be some blowouts in there. I think Philly's just too good. I don't think either of those teams have an answer for all of Philly's firepower, all of their defensive stoppers. I just don't think they quite have the experience to deal with Philly. And so, if Philly gets through relatively unscathed, going up against the Bucks or the Nets, who probably just played a 7-game series fighting tooth and nail, because those were hard-fought games, those last 2 games that the Bucks and Nets played. And I think that's the way the series is going to be. It's going to be physical. It's going to be hard-nosed because the Bucks love to attack the paint. And I think it's going to be a shootout. I'm really excited for that potential series. I'm excited for the Bucks, and I just wanted to remind you not to forget about the Bucks when you're thinking about who could win that Eastern Conference. So those are my thoughts on the Bucks and the Wizards. Outside of that game, like I said, there were some big blowouts tonight. Once again, the Spurs got blown up by the Utah Jazz. Once again, a showcase from Rudy Gobert on the defensive end of the basketball. I saw an interesting tweet today, and it's that Rudy Gobert right now is on a Hall of Fame trajectory, and you might think that's crazy, but it's true. And I'm just very interested to see what people's reactions are when I say that, in addition to if one day Rudy Gobert does make the Hall of Fame, how Twitter or whatever social media is dominant at that time, because it's a long ways in the future, is going to react to the fact that Rudy Gobert makes the Hall of Fame, because people really don't like him for some reason. I think it's just because he is a center that he doesn't play a traditional or like a more modern form of basketball. He just stays down the paint. He's a dominant defensive player, and I think those guys a lot of times get a lot of more hate than they need to. So I don't know what it is. I guess he's just not flashy like some of the other guys. He doesn't shoot threes. And when Rudy Gobert potentially wins his 3rd Defensive Player of the Year award this season, which I think if I had to pick right now, I'm probably picking Rudy Gobert, people are going to be mad. I want you to prepare for that. Knicks Nuggets, another blowout, which is one that I really did not expect. I thought the Knicks were going to put up more of a fight than this. They did not. And Jokic scored 24 of his 32 points in the first quarter of this game. This game was pretty much over by like the first quarter. Now, it did get kind of closer later in the game, but when you only score 12 points or you're down 22 after 1 quarter against a team with the MVP and Nikola Jokic, you're not really going to come back from that. And they just never ended up doing so. One of their worst games of the season, I would potentially say. Julius Randle only 14, 8, and 5, which isn't too bad, but it's not the numbers we're accustomed to seeing from him. They need a better solution at point guard. Elfrid Payton is not the answer. I think that's one of the biggest things that Knicks need to address in the offseason if they want to continue down this path of trying to build themselves into a contender, which I think is the route that they should and are going to go. I think Lonzo Ball is a perfect option for this team. He can shoot. He plays great defense, which really fits the Knicks mentality. I would love to see Lonzo on this Knicks team, and I think ultimately that is something that is possible in the offseason. Other blowouts included, the Hawks blew out the Suns, another one I really did not see coming, and this wasn't like a Trae Young showcase. It wasn't like a John Collins showcase or anything like that. It was just an all-around team effort. The Hawks bench really is what stepped up big in this game, in a big way. For a long time in this quarter, in the fourth quarter of this game, the Hawks held the Suns to 0 points. They ended up outscoring them 38-15 in this fourth quarter. Like I said, pretty balanced. John Collins, 9 points. Tony Snell, 2 points. Clint Capella, 18. Trae Young, 16. Bogdanovich, 16. Kevin Huerter, 13. 16 for Gallo. 16 for Lou Will. 14 for Onyeka Okongwu. It was really balanced. No one scored 20 points, and they put up 135. And that's part of what's so scary about the Atlanta Hawks for whoever has to face them in that first round and potentially the second round. It's that while Trae Young is their star, they've got a ton of great role players. And that's what they tried to do in the offseason, of course. They brought in a bunch of different guys. I think Onyeka Okongwu was a really good draft pick. I still believe he has a lot in the tank. I know he isn't quite as flashy or hasn't been quite as impressive as some of these other rookies have, namely like a LaMelo and Anthony Edwards and Tyrese Halliburton, just as some examples, and Emmanuel Quickley. But I do think he has a ton of potential, and I think he was a steal for the Hawks, the pick that got him at. And when you combine all these great role players with a great offensive player in Trae Young, a great defensive player in Clint Capella, the Hawks are a scary team to face, and Nate McMillan has them playing fantastic basketball. And we can look back at Nate McMillan's old team if we want to talk about a team that is not playing fantastic basketball, with the Pacers losing by 11 points to a De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Halliburton-less Kings team. I know the Pacers are beat up. They've been bad. They've just been really bad, and they were a team that I was really high on to start the season. I thought when Karis LeVert came over and TJ Warren eventually got healthy, of course, TJ Warren ended up not being able to get healthy this season, which is a big blow to this Pacers team. We saw how good he has the potential to be in the bubble. I thought the Pacers were going to be good. I thought they were going to be a 4, a 5 seed. I thought they were going to be some team that could make it to the second round and give a contender a really hard time, a la a Miami Heat, but not winning the series. I thought that was what the Pacers were going to do this season, and instead, I don't even know if they're going to make the play-in game because they're right there on the fringe. I think they're at the 9 spot right now. I think if the Wizards won, they would have jumped them, but due to the Wizards losing, they both stayed at 10 and 9 in their relative spots. The Pacers are in danger of falling out of the play-in game. And for a season that had really high expectations, coming off of TJ Warren's showcase in the bubble, a team with a ton of talent, Miles Turner, Domantas Sabonis, Malcolm Brogdon, especially with the way they started this season, it really looked like this was going to be a big one for the Pacers, and it just has not materialized. And that has led to a lot of rumors that their coach, Nate Bjorken, is going to be fired at the end of the season, or there's potential of that happening. I wouldn't be surprised. It looks like he's kind of lost the team a lot. There was an assistant coach that was screaming at Goga Badatse earlier today in the game, and that you really can't have that. You can't be showing those cracks when you're coming down to the crunch time. The last 5-6 games of the season, you've got to get composed, because if you make the play-in game, you've got 1-2 games to fight for your spot to make the playoffs, and you can't be unraveling at this time. It's the worst possible time in the entire season to unravel, outside of the playoffs, of course, themselves. But they're showing a lot of cracks, and I really thought this was going to be a better season for the Pacers. It just hasn't materialized. Outside of those games, I don't really know if I want to look at too many of those other games. Like I said, a lot of blowouts today. The Celtics beating the Magic by 36. Of course, they couldn't beat the Thunder when we played them. They decided to beat the Magic when I wanted the Magic to win. They just couldn't do it. Taco Fall hit a dream shake on Mo Bamba, and I think you might have to retire after that. Taco also hit him with a mean crossover, which was like the slowest thing ever. It looked like if you've played 2K before, when you make a point guard or like a point forward and he's like a 60 overall, it looked like that type of crossover. I don't know, got him some points. It was pretty cool to see. Tatum just keeps rolling, and the Celtics are trying to build some momentum heading into the playoffs. I need the Magic to win some basketball games so the Thunder can get a better draft pick, but I don't know if they're going to. Blazers beating the Cavs by 36. Another team, the Cavaliers, who I really needed to see win today, and they just did not. Damian Lillard had a monster game, destroyed them. It was never even close. Darius Garland helps this Cavs team out a lot. They miss him a lot when he's not on the court, which is something that's crazy to say after how disappointing his rookie season was, which is, once again, I want to remind you, is understandable because he was coming off a major injury where he only played 2-3 college games, I believe, might have even been 4 at the most. And so people kind of had to temper their expectations, but this season is really showing how valuable he is to them going forward and how valuable he is to this team in the present. The Sixers dominated the Rockets, winning by 20 points. It's the first seed in the Eastern Conference versus the worst team in the NBA. I don't know what you expected. And finally, Grizzlies Timberwolves, a awesome future matchup of Ja Morant versus Anthony Edwards. Ja Morant got a lot of hate today for saying that he thinks he's a top 5 point guard, which I think is the dumbest thing ever. Do you expect a player to go out there and say, "Oh, I'm like the 11th best point guard in the league"? No. These players get here because they're hyper confident, and understandably, Ja is one of the best basketball players in the world. He's one of the top 200, 300 basketball players in the world just being in the NBA. And to get to the level that he is at, where he is a borderline all-star type player, you've got to have that hyper confidence. To become that top 50, top 60 type player, you've got to be super confident in your game, and that's how everyone gets there. So, of course, Ja is not going to go out there and say, "Oh, I think I'm like the 67th best player in the NBA." No, he's going to say, "I think I'm a top 5 point guard," because he does. I can guarantee you he has that mindset. No matter what the stats say, even though he probably isn't, he still thinks that, and that's perfectly understandable. And I don't understand why people hate on that. So he had an incredible game leading the Grizzlies to a win with 37 points, 4 rebounds, 10 assists. All around showing from him. Great showing as well from Kyle Anderson, a guy that I've been singing the praises of this entire season as one of the most unheralded role players in the entire league. And Desmond Bane with 22 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. Another guy coming from this rookie class, which has been really, really good so far for a class that a lot of people thought was disappointing coming into it. I might make a video about this rookie class. Let me know if you want to see it. Also, the Hornets video still has to come. I promise it's coming at some point. And then on the other side for the Timberwolves, Anthony Edwards, 42, 6, and 7. I've said this before and I tweeted this out earlier, and I love Cat, but I think Anthony Edwards is going to be their franchise player, and he has to be the centerpiece of their franchise going forward. Cat's really good. He's one of the best shooting centers we've ever seen. But Anthony Edwards is 19 years old, putting up 42 points multiple times in his rookie season. It's incredible, and this was efficient. One of his biggest problems to start the season was a lack of efficiency. And so if you put up 42 on lower efficiency, people probably wouldn't care that much, which is crazy, first of all, but people probably wouldn't care that much. But now he's doing it efficiently. He's grabbing boards. He's dishing out assists, 7 assists tonight. He's growing into more of a playmaker. He's looking more comfortable with his shot. He said in an interview that he didn't really feel comfortable to start the season with the NBA three-point line. It still felt like he was trying to shoot from college or high school, and so he was really struggling. And now, he seems like he's gotten a lot more comfortable. His shot release looks a lot more fluid, and he feels like he's just learning the game a lot more. And Anthony Edwards is a problem. He's a big problem. I think he is the Timberwolves franchise player. And I think ultimately, if the Wolves do make that return to contention, Anthony Edwards is the guy who's going to bring them there. That's how good I think he is. Also, the Rookie of the Year race is getting really interesting because it's getting hard to ignore how good Anthony Edwards has been, how much time LaMelo's ball has missed. Let me know what you think about the Rookie of the Year race in the comment section below. Let me know. With that being said, that's pretty much all I have for this episode. Let me know what you think about the Milwaukee Bucks. Can they win the Eastern Conference? Can they beat the Nets? Can they beat the Sixers? Let me know in the comment section below. Like and subscribe. I'll see you guys later. Real one, say it back.